Hello, and a big warm welcome to the Guardian Doula's Diary podcast. My name is Angela Deuce, or Angie. I'm your host and the founder of Guardian Doula. I'm a certified birth and postpartum doula and childbirth educator based on Sydney's Northern Beaches and serving women and their families all throughout Sydney. This podcast is an honest collection of the stories and experiences of birthing women and the professionals that support them to empower, equip, and inspire us all. Let's get into it. All right, the topic that everyone is thinking about and concerned about, but a lot of people don't want to talk about. I am going there today, okay? Today's episode is the truth about tearing in birth. And I want to empower you with some statistics and some information. I want to explain to you the different types of tearing and what they mean and the likelihood of each type of tearing. And then I also want to take away some of the fear and give you some really practical tips and tricks and things that you can do to kind of minimize the likelihood that you'll tear, or if you do tear, kind of minimize the severity of those tears. So let's get into it. Now, if you know me, if you've been here for more than 5 seconds, you've probably already worked out that I am a doula who absolutely loves to help women enjoy their birth experience and come out of it super empowered and super excited about their strength and their capability. Because I think when women come out of birth empowered and just blown away at their strength and their grit and their determination, that makes for more confident mothers postpartum. And there is something about coming out of the fire of birth and then walking into your postpartum and you're like, oh my gosh, who was that just came out? Like, was that person inside of me all these years? That was my experience, and I really want that to be your experience too. So that is what I'm all about. And that mission means that we've got to debunk a lot of fears, because when it comes to birth, there are lots of different things that women are nervous about. And certainly one of the things that I hear the most from clients that I work with is that they are a little bit nervous about tearing. It is a very, very common fear to have, or a very common, apprehension. And today I want to dive right into it, because this is just like anything in birth. If you have the right knowledge, the right, preparation, you put the right things in place, it's not that scary, okay? So let's do it. Let's dive in. I want to start with the basics and just define for you sort of what tearing is and then different types of tearing that can occur. So essentially, tearing during birth is when the skin and sometimes the muscle between the vagina and the anus, which is called the perineum, are stretching and then can tear as the baby is being born. Now, not every birth involves tearing, but it is very common. In Australia, about 85% of women who birth vaginally will experience some form of perineal trauma. Now, that statistic does include just natural spontaneous tearing, and it also includes episiotomies, which is when there is a surgical cut to the perineum. So, they are different forms of tearing. One of them is a natural thing that can occur, and then the other one is obviously, it's an intervention, an episiotomy. But regardless, the overall statistic is that about 85% of women having a vaginal birth will experience some degree of perineal trauma. So that is relatively common, right? It's highly likely that you will experience this if you have a vaginal birth. And I want to explain as well the different degrees of tearing. So you get first, second, third, and fourth degree tears. First degree tear is essentially the mildest type of tear. So that's where just the skin of the perineum is affected. Then you get a second degree tear. And so that's a little bit more severe. It goes a little bit deeper and it involves some of the muscles of the perineum, not just the skin. And so these usually require a couple of stitches and will take a little bit longer to heal, a couple of weeks usually. And then you get a third degree tear, which again is a little bit more severe still. And that is a tear that extends through the perineal muscles and into the muscles that surround the the anus. So, you know, a little bit more serious and requires careful stitching. Sometimes the stitching for these kinds of tears will happen in an operating theatre. Not always, it depends. And the healing can take a little bit longer, which makes total sense, right? It's just logical that the more severe the tear, the longer the healing process will take. And then a 4th degree tear, which I think is the one that women tend to be the most nervous about, because it's the most severe type of tear. These 4th degree tears essentially go through the anal sphincter and the lining of the rectum. So obviously that doesn't sound fun, right? But what I want you to know is that these 4th degree tears are so rare. There is like a 1 to 2% chance that you'll have a 4th degree tear. It's really unlikely, okay? So I just want to call that out, that it's uncommon that it would be that severe, but some form of tearing is very common. So I think this is a super important conversation so that we can take a little bit of the fear away and give you some practical tips to prevent tearing, because it is something that you have a little bit of influence in. And I want to just do a really quick disclaimer. I know I hate disclaimers, but let's just go there for a second in case it's not common sense for someone listening. You cannot prevent tearing, right? There's no way of guaranteeing that you won't tear during childbirth, but there are definitely evidence-based ways that you can kind of lower your risk, or that you can, lower your risk. Now, something that I really like to explain to my clients, because I think it actually makes them a little bit less nervous. The skin around your perineum and on your perineum is different to the skin that we have sort of everywhere else on our body. It is much more supple and stretchy, and it's almost similar to the skin that males have on a penis, right? And I know this might be a little bit like, oh, she's talking about this, but I think it's helpful to know. So think about a penis, right? When a penis is erect, it is expanding in size. And so that skin has to accommodate for some form of stretching and expanding, right? And your perineum, women, is similar in the sense that it is far more supple and it is able to expand, unlike other, you know, parts of your body, unlike the skin on your arm or anywhere else. So let that be encouraging. Let that be exciting to know that, you know, the skin down there is actually different to the rest of your body. It is far more stretchy. You know, you are actually really, really well made to give birth. You were made for it. Your body is made for it. If I could just sit down and explain all of the little tiny nuances, I mean, we don't even know all of the nuances of how beautifully designed the female body is to give birth. I feel like, you know, there's new scientific discoveries all the time, but I sort of digress. The way that we are designed as women and the intricate abilities that our body has, and the, you know, all of the little details that are working together to make you, you know, able to give birth, it is incredible. It's phenomenal. So I hope that is just, you know, one little example of why you don't need to be scared of tearing. Another reason that you don't need to be scared of tearing is that I think when women, you know, imagine the moment that they would tear during birth, you almost imagine something like this, okay? I'm going to do an example. This is what you're imagining. That would be horrific, okay? But I can assure you that is not what it feels like, okay? I have had 4 babies and I've had 4 vaginal births. I'm very blessed in that way. And every single time I experienced tearing, right? Remember that statistic, 85% of women who have a vaginal birth will tear in some capacity. And what I have experienced and what I have seen literally all of my clients experience except one in 5 years of experience as a doula, only one client in all of that time has felt the moment that she tore. Generally, what happens is that when the woman tears during birth, they don't actually feel it because there is so much going on down there, and it's just such an intense sensation of the baby's head coming through and the skin stretching and expanding and making room and baby being born that you actually don't feel the very moment that the tear happened. And generally what will happen is that the baby will come out and the mum's like, oh my goodness, I did it. Wow, looking at the baby and so excited. And then like 15 minutes later, she'll turn to me and be like, did I tear? because you don't actually usually feel the moment that it happens, you know? Whereas if you were sitting here right now talking to me and all of a sudden, you know, you had some crazy tear to your perineum, you are going to know about it and it's going to be freaking awful, okay? But that is not usually what it's like during birth. So I want you to be encouraged by that. Another thing to mention that I think will take a little bit of fear away is the fact that the vagina actually has, I remember when I was having my first baby, my cousin explained this to me, and she was studying obstetrics at the time. And she explained to me that the vagina actually has weak spots that are almost in like a zigzag shape. She was explaining to me that that is so that when you tear during birth, the skin can heal really beautifully because it comes together really well. Whereas if you imagine an episiotomy, right, the surgical cut to the perineum, the wound would be something like this. And so for the skin to come back together, it's just a little bit less efficient. It's harder. So the way that your skin around the perineum naturally tears is in that kind of zigzag pattern, which is really conducive to great healing. So again, this is another example of how well designed your body is to give birth and how little fear you need to have going into it, because you were made for it. Your body was made for it. You are not a badly designed machine. But now, having said all of that, I'm sure if you're listening, you're like, okay, I love that I don't need to be scared of tearing, but also I would really like to avoid it if I can, or at least, you know, even if not avoid it completely, experience it to a lesser degree. So let's talk about how you can kind of prevent your risk a little bit of tearing, or, you know, at least minimize the extent to which you tear. Perineal massage is a really, really big one. So doing perineal massage from somewhere around like 34 weeks or so of pregnancy onwards can be a really, really helpful way to minimize tearing. It definitely just helps to kind of increase the elasticity around the perineum. And I'm not going to go into how to do it here just for time, but you know, have a Google. There's plenty of resources out there. Chat to your midwife about it. In a nutshell, though, what happens is that you would insert, you know, 2 fingers, either thumbs or you could use other fingers. It's whatever works for you. But you insert fingers into the vagina and then you are stretching the perineum. Now, obviously, you want to be gentle. You don't want to inflict crazy amounts of pain. That's definitely not the idea behind this. But the kind of method to the madness is that when you are stretching that skin and sort of getting familiar with that sensation, come birth, when you've got a head there and, you know, baby's crowning, it is a sensation that you are kind of already familiar with, and it's a little bit less confronting. And so it's going to be so much easier. This is my next point around forceful pushing. At the time while you're giving birth, that the baby's head is coming to the widest part and that your skin is like stretching over the baby's head, one of the worst things that you can do is push super hard in that moment to just try and get it over and done with and get the baby out as quick as possible. What is often a lot better is if you can go really, really slow to give your skin as much time as possible to stretch over baby's head. And so often, you know, you can use breathing techniques. There's so much I could say, but one example is that you could do like panting instead of the more, you know, full-blown like bearing down, pushing really hard approach. When the baby's head is crowning, you can kind of go something like that to really slow down and to stop you from like just pushing super hard to try and get it over and done with as fast as possible. Although I know that is so tempting. I've been there. But I definitely think there's a lot to be said for just letting that skin stretch as slowly as possible. And so this is why perineal massage is so helpful. It's not helpful, you know, because you're going to try and go and replicate stretching your perineum out to the same diameter of a baby's head being there. Like, oh my gosh, you're never going to replicate that. Okay, so don't even try. That's not the goal of perineal massage. The goal is more so that you are just getting familiar with that stretching sensation so that come labor, when the head's right there, you can tell yourself, I have felt this before. Yes, this is a more intense version of what I've experienced, but it's something that I've experienced nonetheless. And so you are so much more likely to be able to go slow, to do those beautiful little pants instead of bearing down and pushing as hard as you can to try and have baby out as quickly as possible in that moment. So I think time is of the essence. And so that's why perineal massage is so helpful. It's also something that can be really difficult, like logistically, because as your tummy gets really big, it can be super hard to reach. And so sometimes, having a partner help you can be really helpful. The dads are like, say no more, happy to be of assistance. Send this to your partner and he'll be like, oh my gosh, yes, babe, let's do all the birth prep. You'll see they'll suddenly be very invested in helping you prepare for your birth. Anyway, the next thing that I want to talk about is a warm compress during pushing. So this is a real game changer. If you can get someone to apply a warm compress to your perineum while the baby is coming out, it really can reduce the likelihood of a severe tear. So there's actually research that shows that a warm compress applied to the perineum during pushing can reduce the likelihood of a 3rd or a 4th degree tear. So it really helps to prevent those kind of more severe tears. And I will say as well, if you're having a water birth and you're in the water, you are immersed in the warm water, that is going to work in a really similar way. So either, plan for a water birth or use the warm compress if you're having a land birth, but it can really help. What I was kind of referring to before when I touched on pushing and kind of going slow, I think one of the best things that you can do if we're talking about preventing tearing is avoiding, super forceful or coached pushing. Sometimes, care providers will be like, okay, you're 10 centimeters, push, like your life depends on it. And you just almost get told to push really, really hard. This can also sometimes be the case if you have an epidural on board. And so you can't really feel what your body's asking you to do. And you're just told like, okay, push really hard, push. That can sometimes mean that you are more likely to tear because you're not doing what we talked about before, going really slow and giving your skin time to stretch over the baby's head. So super forceful pushing the whole way through is actually not the best bet. There's definitely a place for bearing down really hard and working hard to bring that baby down. But then when the head is right there and the head's coming through, you want to go nice and slow. Time is your friend. Use it. So I definitely say if you don't have an epidural, you're having an unmedicated birth and you can feel what's going on, try to, and again, a doula is so important for this, really be in your own zone. Try and, have the midwives not scream orders at you if possible. And there's a place for coach pushing. I'm not saying that it's never helpful because it totally can be. But if you are, feeling what your body's asking for, you're in tune with your instincts because you've got no epidural or anything kind of stopping your ability to feel what your body is telling you to do, then go with what your body's asking for. You will feel at the point, where the head's coming out and all of that skin is stretching like crazy. This is what women describe as the ring of fire. You will feel when that is happening. I'm telling you, you're going to know. Get your support team to remind you that it is okay to take your time. Take the pressure off, go nice and slow, and that is going to be one of the best things that you can do. Now, sometimes another thing that you can do is having what's called hands-on support from your birth team. So a lot of midwives will offer this, and it can be, some women don't want it, but other women are like, yes, please, this is really helpful. A midwife can pop a glove on and kind of put her hand on your perineum almost to help you go slow and slow things down. It's kind of a way of supporting your perineum as the baby is crowning. So this could be something that you can chat about with your midwife or, it's a personal one. Some women really don't like the idea of that. And then others are like, oh yeah, that would be great. And also it's okay if you think one thing now and then you change your mind during the birth. That's fine too. And it can be really common as well. Another thing that I'll emphasize when it comes to, trying to prevent tearing in birth or bad tearing in birth is really being mindful of your birth positions. So lying flat on your back is probably one of the worst positions that you can be in when you're giving birth for lots of reasons. I mean, it's gravity's not really helping you when you're trying to push the baby out, but also when you're lying flat on your back, there is so much more pressure on your perineum. But if you can be in, an all fours position or a squat position or even a side lying position, those positions are all going to really decrease the amount of pressure that is on your perineum. So that can really help you prevent tearing as well. I think it's just about, finding what works for you in the moment and feeling like you have the capacity to stand up for yourself and advocate for yourself. Just hire a doula so that this is easier. I'm telling you, just don't be on your own in this. And so this essentially brings me to one of my last tips, which is, work with a doula. I haven't necessarily seen a study, and I mean, maybe there is something out there, but I haven't seen a study that shows that having a doula directly means that you are less likely to experience tearing in birth. But the things that do often mean that you're less likely to experience tearing in birth are things like, knowing what positions to try, providing that support and guidance and advocacy that is going to mean that you are kind of able to just stay in your bubble and do your thing, and be really empowered to take your time and to do it, calmly and in a very controlled, peaceful way, as opposed to this super push, like your life depends on it, we're all in a rush and rah, rah, rah. Having someone to kind of hold that space for you can be absolutely huge. And I mean, sometimes it's even as simple as, I've had clients a lot of times over the years who have put in their birth plan, if I'm not in the water, I really want a warm compress. And then I've just simply reminded the midwives, it's really important to her that we use a warm compress if she's not in the water. Could we get one now? Why don't I go grab one for you? Just even having that person on your birth team who is going to remember these things. And no hate to the dads. I'm not saying that the dads failed in those situations when they forgot to bring it up. It is intense being a dad and watching your partner go through labor and, it's your baby's about to be born. It is a huge, huge moment, and it's very emotionally loaded for the dad. And I mean, look, I'm not going to lie. It's very emotional for me too. I love what I do. I'm so passionate about it. So the moment that baby comes out, I never don't have tears in my eyes the moment that mum meets her baby. But I am certainly a lot more calm and less emotionally heightened than the dad is. And so it's easier for me to just think objectively in that moment, as much as I am loving it and I'm impacted to my core by the beautiful moment that I'm seeing in front of me. It's just less. I'm that little bit less emotionally heightened. And so I can kind of think more clearly and be like, okay, yeah, warm compress. I'm going to remind her about the breathing, or, really hold the space so that no one's rushing her or pressuring her. Those things all working together are little things that make a really big difference. So I would definitely say, think about hiring a doula if you haven't done that already. So to kind of close off, the thing that I really want to leave you with is that tearing is not something that you need to be scared of. It's really common. It's totally okay if it happens. There are things you can do to try and prevent it. So go for it, do all the things. But really, at the end of the day, your body was made to do this. You were made to give birth. And so you don't need to worry about tearing or not tearing. And I think with the right preparation and support, you can go into your birth, feeling super confident and super excited to take it on however it comes. Now, before I go, just really quickly, I wanted to mention, if you are from Sydney and you're like, oh my gosh, I really need a doula. Feel free to reach out and we can see if we're a good fit for one another. I usually do a call with both parents to make sure that, we're all comfortable with one another and we feel like it's going to be a good fit. And I really encourage you to reach out sooner than later. It really breaks my heart when people reach out and I'm fully booked and I can't take them on. But I am really, really strict about how many women I am on call for at any given time, because I never want to be in a position where I've spread myself too thin and then my clients suffer. So I am so strict on capping my numbers and really sticking to that cap. So reach out sooner than later. But also, having said that, it's never too late. So if you feel a little bit oh gosh, maybe I've left it too late, always ask the question, because you might surprise yourself and there's a spot available. But yeah, I do tend to book out quite far in advance. I mean, as I sit here recording this, it is April and I'm pretty much fully booked all the way to November this year. I've got a couple of spots here and there free, but overall I'm almost fully booked out. So, just get on it sooner than later. Don't leave it to the last minute if you can help it. And yeah, I'd love to support you. I'm so passionate about being a doula because I have just seen firsthand again and again and again over the years the huge difference that it makes to women and their births. And having given birth myself 4 times, I know how significant that is, and what a gift it is to women if you have an empowering birth experience. Oh my gosh, it changes everything. Birth marks you. You don't give birth and walk out that room the same as before you walked in. It really is something that impacts you in a super profound way forever. And I think that's something that's worth, investing in, and it's worth doing it right. So put all the things in place. I really, really encourage you. Don't don't regret not doing all the things, yeah. Get it all lined up and in place, and I wish you all the best. Thanks for joining us for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a rating or a comment, and I can't wait to see you back here for the next one.